Hello, and welcome to the first episode of French Speaks, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the French Academy. I am your host, Valerie Forney, and we are joined by a very special guest today, Marie-Laure Chaberqui, a French linguist born and raised in France, affected by the French Academy's actions. Before we dive into the French Academy, let me provide you with some context. What is the French Academy, its history, and its pros and cons? Starting off, the French Academy, also known in French as l'Académie Française, is an official French governmental organization responsible for the protection, preservation, and cultivation of the French language and its culture. Its goals are demonstrated in various ways, through having made and actively updating their official French dictionary, regulating official spelling and grammar rules, and eliminating regional French languages to unify France, rejecting modern-day linguistic changes such as Anglicization, which is the implementation and integration of the English language into other world languages, and proposing/regulating Francophone education in schools across France, as well as other French-speaking countries. The French Academy was initially established under King Louis XIII by his Catholic minister Richelieu. Its original goal was quite convoluted. Being under a strict regime, the Academy didn't have the best intention for the language, and rather, its members, being extreme royalists, wanted to use the organization and its power to instill the rules of the monarchy and for their own personal desires. During the French Revolution, activity at the Academy was suspended, and after the governmental transformation of France, the Academy was changed under Napoleon. He aimed to unify all of France after the Revolution, and found that the regional languages in the country needed to be eliminated in order for this unification to occur. So, he changed the French Academy into a tool to assist with his goal. Since the organization had power through their official dictionaries, its influence on the Francophone education system, and the governmental regulation over the French language. In more modern times, specifically the 80s, the French government started rolling back on their language unification plan, allowing for regional languages to be spoken again and taught in schools in order to bring back the important culture and appreciate these dialects' history. However, the traditional members of the French Academy spoke out against this action and have taken countermeasures against it, believing that regional dialects could harm the French language and its legacy. Nowadays, the Academy is seen in various different lights by the French people. Some appreciate the official documentation the Academy has provided through its dictionaries and regulations. Some view the Academy as an important historical symbol of the French, while others find that the organization is way too traditional, being stuck in the past through its rejection of other cultures, regional languages, and of modern-day linguistic change. There is also a big issue of the members of the Academy, known as the Immortals, who can stay in the organization for life until they choose to depart or get dismissed for misconduct. The process of becoming a member of the French Academy is controversial, as they are not voted in by the public, but rather by other Academy members, which leads to bias and members who are simply owed a spot being in the organization. In addition, there are no specific required qualifications to be a member, which has led to unqualified members having one of the 40 exclusive seats in the Academy, even though they may have no extensive French language education or linguistic expertise. Long explanation aside, as you can see, the French Academy has quite the history and interesting reputation in France, with it helping and harming the French language. This next segment will be an interview with Miss Marie, who has an extensive knowledge on French linguistics and her own personal experience with the French Academy. growing up in France and speaking the language her whole life. Hello, Marie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Oh, I'm glad to hear you're doing well. I'm doing pretty good. As you can see, the topic today is the French Academy. And I'm curious about your professional opinion of the organization and its actions as of recent. Shall we get started?
That's a perfect topic. I love it. Yes, let's get started.
All right, perfect. So, what is your generalized opinion on the French Academy? Do you find that you agree more with the French, who find that it is an important cultural symbol or organization? Or do you side more with those who have more critiques and frustrations with the conduct of the organization?
So, well, when it was first founded, as you very correctly pointed, the Academy had more of a political status. Um, uh, it was more of a political organization than anything else. And at the time that it was founded, France was still a monarchy under Louis XIII, and the church was still very powerful. So Richelieu, who was the founder of the Academy, found political purpose in the institution, even though the whole concept was quite honorable. Um, but today, the role of the Academy is mainly to contribute to the harmonization of the French language. Um, and so the idea is for the institution to make the language understandable by all French people and Francophone communities. Um, as a whole, the concept is very honorable. It has a very good purpose, and it's an important cultural organization because it reflects something that is very meaningful culturally. The French language is a language that has a big impact worldwide, and the preservation of the language is a very important part of the culture in general, and it makes sense for an institution like the French Academy to over the centuries keep on working and keep on delivering and keep on making sure that it holds its standards. However, there is a definite evolution. There is a definite globalization, and with globalization comes an evolution of languages and comes an evolution of terminology, and there comes also an evolution of standards, and the French Academy has a long history of rigidity and can be criticized for not being flexible enough. So it's difficult to say. It's difficult to take a real stance on whether, is it an important organization and does it have value? Yes, it does have value. But is it obsolete? No, it's not really obsolete. But at the same time, it's not flexible enough to allow for the language to evolve and develop at the pace that it needs to develop, considering the globalization, today's globalization. So there is frustration, and the members of the Academy are not responsive enough to the frustration of the people. And as a translator, um, it is it is an issue because we do have to respect and follow the guidelines for the French language, for the official French language, and they are pretty strict. And when we do technical translation, it can become difficult. And so um, I am, I can take a deep stance in either, whether I agree with the French Academy or I disagree with it. I'm right in the middle.
There's definitely a middle ground to be seen.
Yes.
That's very insightful. Thank you. What is your overall opinion on the current members of the French Academy? Not exactly on their process of getting into the organization itself, but rather of the individuals, their recommendations and their specific qualifications.
So that's a really interesting question, Valerie. And honestly, very honestly, I do not know who the members are. So that's, how familiar we are with the French Academy and how much attention we pay to the members of the French Academy on a day-to-day basis. So as I'm looking into it, there are usually 40 members, which are, the 40 immortals, and there seems to be only 35 members today. So there's 5 missing, which need to be replaced, who need to be replaced. And out of those 35 members, I can see that 5 of them are women, which is a great thing. I'm very happy to see that. So already there's a greater representation by women, which, is pretty interesting because women only entered the academy since 1981. And as we know, the academy has been in session since 1635. So it's taken a long time to bring women in the group. Out of the 35 academy members, the only one that whose name I recognize is Chantal Thomas, who is an author. So my guess would be that there are a few authors, and there must be some scientists, and there must be some political figures, and because usually that's the usual mix among the academy members. But that's as much as I know of what the members, what the background of the members is.
Okay. That is very good to know. Thank you. Do you think the immortals of the French Academy should be voted in by the citizens of France, or how it is currently by other members of the French Academy?
So if you will allow me, I will give a little history on how the immortals are voted in.
Of course.
So when it was first founded in 1634, so like 17th century, right? There were 9 members, and then not that long after that, in 1639, it grew into 40 members. And all 40 members were elected through the members of the academy. So it started already back then that the members of the academy elected each other. So how it works is that members elect themselves. When a member of the academy dies, because they are elected for life, and actually they are we can even say that they are elected all the way to posthumously because they are immortals. So they are elected forever, eternally.
Mhm.
Um, and something I haven't even looked at is I wonder if on their tombstone there is a mention of, that they're a member of the French Academy.
Yeah.
Um, so that it's mentioned posthumously. But so when a member dies, because they don't leave the academy, they are part of the academy for life. When they die, they there is a re-election for a new member within 3 months.
Wow.
Um, so the candidates will be nominated by members of the academy and elected by the members of the academy. So you cannot, as somebody from the outside, just decide, hey, I would like to be a member of the academy. Here, I'm nominating myself, and you can elect me. You have to be nominated by one of the members of the academy, and so it's all a very exclusive thing. It's a very exclusive process. Um, so is that right? I don't know. Um, Honestly, I don't care. It doesn't make a difference to me. I think that the whole process, the whole thing is so exclusive anyway that it doesn't really make a difference. And honestly, because the whole institution has become so maybe irrelevant in the way that um, it weighs over the French language, it doesn't really matter whether the members are elected by the public or its own members. I think I think the members have done a fairly good job at um, electing its own members. So yeah, sure, keep on going.
Oh, thank you. Do you think that there should be extensive French language education or linguistic expertise as a required qualification to be a member of the French Academy?
So I mean, we're talking about an institution dedicated to the French language.
Mhm.
We're talking about an institution that is in charge of an official French language dictionary, an official journal that publishes regulatory texts and laws. Um, it's an institution founded for the purpose of regulating and maintaining the French language. And in doing so, the members are responsible for establishing rules in grammar, rhetoric, punctuation, spelling, and everything that has to do with the handling of the language.
Mhm.
So, does it make sense that the members are educated in the French language and experts in linguistics? I guess it would. But then again, right? Since the beginning, the members, at the beginning, the members were um, very much experts at the French language. Um, and then little by little, it became so that the members of the academy were representatives of, the army, the political figures. They were scientists. They were from all kinds of different backgrounds, and very few of them were actually linguists. And I can't even think of a single translator. I can't even think of anybody that was a teacher, or there were really very few experts in the French language. And yet, somehow, they were able to keep control of the French language and to keep control of, you know, the very core purpose of the academy. And they did a beautiful job at maintaining what it's supposed to be. And so, yeah, I don't think it's necessary. On top of everything, because of the world the way it is today, because of the booming technology, because of artificial intelligence taking over, because of, you know, the globalization of everything, because of the fast pace of the evolution in the world. We need people who can focus more than just the linguistic side of it, and who can help develop language and help help people, members of the academy, broaden their perspective and catch up with the pace of everything. So there needs to be more than just linguistic experts. So it is actually important to have diverse experts at the table, more than just linguists. So, in my opinion, it is great that we have such a variety of people, such a variety of experts.
That's a really insightful take, you know, considering the multiple different expertise and how the different contexts of everybody's studies can be applied to linguistics especially.
You know, I really think that one of the reasons why I have that perspective is because I'm a translator. And because I working with languages, I can appreciate how difficult it becomes when you become too focused on the details of linguistics alone. And you really have to be able to allow the language to evolve, and you really have to be able to catch up with, you know, how fast everything is evolving. And languages are not, you cannot allow a language to die. You cannot allow a language to not evolve with the community that it's serving. And French is part of a community that's evolving in a world that is developing at a very fast pace. And so, in order to serve that community, it has to evolve at a fast pace.
That makes sense. Well, thank you so much. What is your opinion on the rejection of Anglicization from the French Academy? Do you think that the Academy should adjust with the flow of modern linguistics and the language change, or should it stay traditional?
Okay, this is a tough one. So, I can appreciate the fight from either side. the There are valuable reasons to try and keep the French language as French as possible. Because basically, that is the purpose of the French Academy, right?
Definitely.
And in order to do that, you have to make sure that you fight every way possible to stay away from any intruders, to fight any intruders. And so, Anglicisms, well, they're intruders. and and there are, this is why they created those terminology committees, because they want to, they have, those committees are dedicated to find equivalents to English words. They are dedicated to um, finding words that hmm, will be equivalent to those English words that are trying so hard to become part of the French language. And and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. And so, oh, it's really hard to prevent Anglicization, Anglicization,
Anglicization. It's a hard word to
Anglicization.
say.
It's really hard to fight Anglicization because um, it has to be part of the evolution of the language, because technology includes English. You cannot do without English. You know, how do you use iPod? How do you say iPod without using iPod?
Yeah.
Um, there are so many words that you cannot translate. I mean, and if you translate them, it becomes so ridiculous that you sound like you're from, generations behind. So if you want to be part of that globalized world, and if you want to be part of that, developed world and move forward along with the rest of the world, you have to be able to accept Anglicism. And so, both sides are understandable and both fights are understandable.
Well, thank you. That is very insightful. All right, moving on to the next question. What is your opinion on the rejection of French regional dialects and the French Academy's lack of support for their rejuvenation recently?
Okay, so this sounds quite prejudicial and discriminatory, doesn't it? I mean, especially coming from an academy supporting the French language. So you have to keep in mind that the whole concept behind the French Academy is to keep French pure. And so the members of the Academy, well, they're like little CDC soldiers, and they're fighting all the little contaminants that are coming to, enter the language. And so all these dialects, they're really a nuisance to the Academy. But to the rest of the population, they're beautiful. They're part of the culture. And when the French Academy is supposed to, it's supposed to protect and support the culture. But it doesn't. It just is there to support elite French. And that's one of the main issues with the French Academy, is that it's a very elitist institution. And like a lot of antique, old institutions, like the church, the French Academy, all of these very royalist institutions, they are very elitist and they're very exclusive. And so, all those little people, the paysans, the commoners are not included. And so the French dialects, the regional representation is not accepted, it's not tolerated. So the French language does not include the dialects. And it's really a pity, and it's really sad that they do not support the the rejuvenation of all these beautiful cultures, the folklore um, of the French culture, um, and but at the same time, it's the core. It's the core of the French Academy. I mean, it really is what they stand for. So, can you be upset with them? Yes, you can be upset with them because as people of the French culture, we want to include everyone. But as an institution, they're doing what they're supposed to do.
That makes sense, yeah. I could see how, both, I guess, context of the situation, it's like that is what they are created for. But then at the same time, it's like with regional dialects, it's also so intertwined with the history of France and the French language itself. So it's like it's hard to find a middle ground.
Right. So because the academy does more than just they they keep updating the dictionary of the French language, and then they have that terminology committee, and then they have, of course, literary awards that that they deliver every year, and then but they also do fundings for caritative associations that have to do with literature and science, and they deliver grants for students for families in need, and all of this. And so you would think, that they would have something to give or to provide for regional dialects, that they would support that, but they don't. And that's because it bothers them to no end that they feel like they are part of the French language. And the French language for them has to be pure.
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate situation.
But it's a constant contradiction between. It's beautiful. Their work is beautiful and it's valuable. When you listen to their speeches, oh, it takes you. It's so powerful because they are so eloquent, and they use words that are so substantial. It has so much substance. It's beautiful the way they talk. So you think, oh, this is this is French. This is what I want French to sound like. You become proud of your language, and then at the same time, they're so petty, and it's so frustrating. So it's that constant contradiction.
If only there could be some type of compromise or
Yeah.
a mixture,
Right.
to appreciate just all that is French in general.
Yes.
Including encompassing everything. That'd be really nice. So, Marie, would you say that you know any French regional dialects, or perhaps know anybody who knows any? And if so, what is that significance to you or to them?
So I don't know any dialects. I've heard some. My father was from the south of France, so I've spent a lot of time in the south of France since I was a child. So I've heard a lot of it, and I have some friends who are from the terroir who really value the dialects, and for them, I something that you cannot take away from them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some friends who are from Corsica, and you know, Corsican is a very um, it's a dialect that they still speak to this day. You know, because you go to the south of France, and it's a very strong accent, but very few people still speak the Languedoc or the, so um, they speak oh like usual French, you know, standard French, but with a very strong accent. But when you go to Corsica, they speak Corsican, which is really its own dialect. And so they're very proud of their language. And yeah, it's just it's it's part of France.
Mm-hmm. Indubitably, for sure.
Yeah.
It's hopefully, perhaps some perspectives could be changed or more progress could be made to support the dialects, especially now that, the French state has decided to roll back on um, eliminating the dialects and more supporting it in the education system.
So okay, so here's what's happening to here's what's happened over decades too. Um, the French Academy is not the normalizing body of the French language anymore. They are basically more of an advisory body. They're more a counseling body, because the Ministry of Culture is really the ones that are normalizing the French language. The Ministry of Culture is in charge of education, and so they're the ones that that um, um, make regulations and regulate the language and how it should be used, and how it should evolve. And so there's a big fight between the two bodies. But the French Academy, it has more of a moral stance than really a power in the whole history anymore.
Okay. Thank you. It's very good to know. So, what actions of the French Academy do you find have been helpful for the French language overall?
Well, overall, the work of the French Academy, the core work of the French Academy, you know, which is making and keeping the French language pure and eloquent, is really valuable. And as a linguist, I really appreciate the value and the meaning of each word. You know, I can appreciate the importance of, you know, preserving the roots of our language. It's part of our culture. And okay, here's something. You know how when people go and visit Paris, for example, you know, they marvel about the architecture, and nobody ever questions, you know, why we take such pride in preserving the architecture of the city. Nobody questions it. So why do we question an institution like the French Academy that is trying to preserve another part of our culture, which is, you know, the language? And they're, you know, for centuries they have been doing, you know, really putting their foot down and trying very hard to preserve something that has so much substance and is so subtle, and everybody around the world agrees that, it's a beautiful language, and there is no question that it should be preserved. So I find their work remarkable, and I find the fight that they've been fighting for so long, and the fact that they've been relentless despite such controversy, just absolutely admirable.
I definitely agree. I read a journal from the Science Journal. It was written in 1835, actually,
Wow.
and it was an American press discussing the French Academy, which I thought was really interesting. And one of the points that the anonymous author brought up in his writing was about how notable it is, their act of preservation for the French language. And he was talking about how, even while they do come off as maybe prestigious or stuck up sometimes,
Yeah.
exactly, or, quite traditional,
Yeah.
that he was like, well, if you look at it in the literal sense, the French language has stuck around a lot more in its original form. Obviously, it's changed over time, but
Yes.
been preserved a lot more than a lot of other languages. And he was even comparing it to the German language
Yeah.
then, because it seems like the German language has gone through a lot of linguistic change and has lost a lot of its original roots throughout time just because of the lack of preservation. And so it was just really interesting to see an American, journalist discuss this. And of course, it was in 1835, and of course, obviously, time has passed. And
Yes.
but even still, it seems like their intention of preservation and just keeping the French language to what it is very notable and admirable. And it feels like French language is in a better state than a lot of other languages, I'd say, nowadays.
Yeah, it is. And it doesn't prevent evolution on sidetrack evolutions. There's slang, and there's a technical evolution of the French language, and there's anglicization, and but to the core, the French language, the French grammar has not changed. You have the rhetoric has changed very little. When you listen to some of the speeches in French, you can still sense the same power, the words that are used are still, the same as they used to be, and it's just the way that the sentences are formed and are delivered, it's still the same. It still has the same power. It still has the same beauty. It's just, the same flow. It just, I personally really appreciate the work that the French Academy has done throughout the centuries, and for me, it would be a shame to see the institution go.
I agree. All right. Last and final question here for you, Marie. What actions of the French Academy do you find harm the French language?
So, unfortunately, as is the case with any archaic institution or ancient institution, archaic would be really the word to use here. The members, whenever you speak of change, they fear that they're going to lose their authority. And so they don't want to change their conservative approach. Because if they do, then they give in. And if they give in, then they don't have control. They lose their control. And so, because of that, they remain very rigid, and they remain very strict. because they remain very strict, they allow for very little evolution. And unfortunately, as we said before, the world is evolving at a very fast pace, and languages have to develop at a very fast pace. We have to catch up. And French is not a technical language. And so, you know, the Academy wants to avoid Anglicism. Great. Sure, that's great. But if you want to avoid Anglicism and you want to, be part of that world that moves at a very fast pace, what are you going to do? You cannot remain strict and you cannot remain rigid and, have that situation where you're going to control the language and it's going to remain the way it is and be so set in the archaic views and perspective, because what's going to happen is that English is going to take over. And you will completely lose control of the language. And French is going to become a very archaic language in the technical world. It will have, there's no question, it will remain a very powerful language when it comes to literature, poetry, in terms of maybe even politics. But in technology, in artificial intelligence, everything that's happening right now in the world that is creating that global stance and all the platforms, all the social platforms, French will not have any more relevance. And so if you want to be present on on today's platforms, global platforms, you're going to have to allow evolution. And in order to allow that evolution, you're going to have to become much more flexible than you are. And in that sense, right now, you are harming the French language.
It's like the French language is getting set behind, in a sense.
Yes.
Flexibility definitely seems to be needed from the Academy. It's just is becoming necessary at this point.
It is becoming necessary, yeah.
Well, what a response from Miss Marie. Thank you so much for your participation in this interview and podcast.
You're so welcome.
Of course. Your knowledge is truly so admirable, and I find that your perspective really adds a lot to the conversation.
Oh, thank you.
Of course. I feel like you just give this topic so much more depth. Through this podcast, we have delved deep into just what the French Academy is, its long history, its benefits, and its fallbacks. Hopefully in the future, critical discussions like these can help change the French Academy and truly make it into an admirable organization that is helping even more to preserve the language and the French culture.
Let's hope. That would be great, because we want to keep the French Academy.
Exactly.
Yes, we don't want, it would be such a shame if it went away.
Yeah. Another thank you to the amazing French linguist Marie for joining us and providing us with her spectacular insight. And I've been your host, Valerie Forney, on today's episode of French Speaks. Have an amazing morning, afternoon, or night. Goodbye.